Many students, like we've been talking about this morning in Atlantic provinces, are returning to school today, with others having one more day of summer vacation before heading back to class just tomorrow morning. And while it can be an exciting time, it can also be stressful for kids as they transition back to the classroom or head to school for the very first time. Dr. Lindsay Euman is a clinical psychologist with the IWK who specializes in treatment for anxiety, and she joins us this morning. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, this isn't just your professional area of expertise. You also have two young children who are heading back to school tomorrow. So how are you feeling yourself?
I think I'm feeling okay. I think a little nerves is normal, so I'm just taking it all in. It's a busy time, I think.
For sure. Okay. Many students, like we've been talking about this morning in Atlantic provinces, are returning to school today, with others having one more day of summer vacation before heading back to class just tomorrow morning. And while it can be an exciting time, it can also be stressful for kids as they transition back to the classroom or head to school for the very first time. Dr. Lindsay Euman is a clinical psychologist with the IWK who specializes in treatment for anxiety, and she joins us this morning. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, this isn't just your professional area of expertise. You also have two young children who are heading back to school tomorrow. So how are you feeling yourself?
I think I'm feeling okay. I think a little nerves is normal, so I'm just taking it all in. It's a busy time, I think.
For sure. Okay, so first of all, for many young children who will be heading to school for the very first time today and tomorrow, everything is going to be new to them. So what piece of advice would you have for parents as they prepare the little ones, to start this new adventure?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you hit on it. The real keyword is preparation. So I think we want to remember it's really normal for kids and honestly for parents too to feel some anxiety with going back to school, or especially if they're starting school for the first time. So I think just normalizing that it's okay to have some anxiety, it's okay to talk about it, but really helping to prepare kids. So if you could tell them sort of a little bit about what to expect. So I think it's the unexpected that can cause and fuel anxiety as well. So, telling them what the day will look like, who their teacher will be, maybe if you're able to take a look at the school or look at some pictures online, just to kind of help prepare them what to expect. That could really ease a lot of anxiety, especially for the unknown piece of it.
And for some kids, obviously they're super excited to get back to class, see their friends, meet their teacher. But how can you tell if it's excitement or anxiousness? Like, what are some of the differences people or parents should be really looking out for to make it as stress-free as possible?
Yeah, so I think that the important thing to remember is you could actually have both. So you could have that excitement and happiness and looking forward to it, and you could also have anxiety at the same time. So sometimes it can feel like we have to pick one, but I think just, looking for most kids, the anxiety will be there, and it'll usually last a few days, sometimes a few weeks for some children. So for most kids, that anxiety will taper off, and they'll start to be replaced more with excitement and getting back into the routine. There's a smaller subset of children where if that anxiety really persists, or if it's really severe, if they're not eating, if they're not sleeping, if it's persisting beyond that typical kind of period of a few weeks, then they might want to look into getting some additional help. And the good news is there is a lot of help out there to help children and parents with dealing with that anxiety.
Where can they go for that help?
They could actually go to the IWK. The IWK specializes in anxiety, but there's also a lot of really excellent private clinicians across the city that specialize in anxiety. So finding that right match for someone who specializes in anxiety, and a lot of that work, honestly, for younger kids will be working with parents too, to teach them some things that they can do to help really ease that anxiety. And there's also some really great resources in the community as well. The community health teams put on a really great free workshop a couple of times a year called My Child is Anxious, Should I Worry? That parents can just sign up for. There's an Anxiety Canada website that has some really great resources for back to school. So yeah, if you know where to look, there's a lot of really great resources out there.
I didn't realize there were so many, and I'm so happy that you shared that with us. And we know that the first several days, like you said, getting back into the school routine, it takes some adjustment, getting up early, and the breakfast routine, all that. Should we be keeping kids their activities during the evenings and let's say even this weekend pretty low key, just to minimize the stress and help them get used to the new normal again?
Yeah, I've seen also a lot of stuff on social media as well, like just keeping things really low key. And I think there's definitely something to be said for that too. I mean, kids and parents are going to be pretty exhausted this week. It's a big shift every year coming back from summer. And so I think just having the expectations pretty low, not planning any major things, especially during the evenings so that they can make sure that they get a good night's sleep. All that stuff's really important. It doesn't mean you have to stop everything if you already have something planned or something that, your child's really looking forward to. I wouldn't say, necessarily cancel that, but I think just really keying into your child's own cues. Most parents can tell when their child's kind of getting to that point where they need a break. So I think if there's something there that you could take off the plate just to let them have that time to unwind at the end of the day, that's going to be really helpful and set them up for the most success for the next day as well.
And this other thing, I'm asking for my friends. Truly, I really am. Okay. For some, their kids are going off to school for the very first time. The kids are excited and anxious, but they are also feeling that. What piece of advice would you share with parents? Because I know they don't want to cry and make things worse, but sometimes they can't help it. So what would you say would be the best piece of advice when it comes to the parents letting go?
Yeah, that's a great great question, and it's really common. I think it's okay to acknowledge as parents that it is nerve-wracking, it's emotional, and that's okay. At the same time, we really want to make sure that we remember that kids really are going to take their cues from their caregivers, from their parents. So if they see their parents really worried or anxious, and that could be both verbally but also the nonverbal cues too. So if they overhear their parents talking about worries about who their teacher's going to be, or they're going to have their friends in their class or anything like that, and they see their parents worried, that anxiety will usually trickle down into the child. So I think just it's okay as a parent to be nervous, but also to be careful about what we're kind of sharing in front of the children too, and just really trying to focus not just on the worries, but also on the exciting things, seeing their friends, what it's going to look like, getting to maybe pack their lunch for the first time. So that's all really important. But I'd say probably the biggest piece of advice I would give to parents is that even if your child is experiencing anxiety, distress, or tears, it's really key to make sure that they still go to school and that they stay for the full day. Because the one thing we
Okay.
definitely know about anxiety is that if we, our instinct to want to
Yeah.
avoid it, it makes us feel better in the short term and saying, if you need anything, call me, I'll come pick you
Oh,
up. But it really does unfortunately make things worse in the long term. So
okay.
we really want to, empower the children. Even if you have a hard day, really instead of just giving that
Mm,
reassurance of it's all going to be okay, it might be helpful more to problem solve with them. So if this happens, what can you do? And
yeah.
really let them have a game plan. So as tempting as it is to go pick them up earlier to keep them home one more day, I'd really advise against that because usually over a couple of days that fear will subside.
Well, Dr. Lindsay, I appreciate it because that's advice I know that you're going to be holding close to your heart as your kids head off to
Yeah.
school too. So thank you so much for joining us this morning and all the advice you shared with us. We appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. That was Dr. Lindsay Human, a clinical psychologist who specializes in anxiety treatment at the IWK with some back to school advice for parents and kiddos as well.